Yo, what is up? Hey, welcome back to another video here on Free Will Photos. And I guess today's really more a live stream. So I'm actually excited for what we're going to be doing. You've seen on the starting soon page kind of what we're going to be creating. It's getting cooler outside, so I'm taking more time to do things that are indoors. And, things in my job have kind of slowed down. So I'm just trying to find more time to pick up my camera and create new images. So that's where this flat lay series is coming from, or at least this idea of creating a flat lay here inside of ON1 Photo Raw. And, for that matter, you could do this in pretty much any other photo editing software that allows for adding in layers and textures and blend mode. So, we're going to get into all that here shortly. Hopefully you all had a great Thanksgiving at the time of this live stream. And, if you're watching this recording, then you'll have to go and check the ON1 website, but they are having a discount on ON1 Photo Raw. So if you want to save some money and you haven't already picked up ON1, then you may want to go over there and check that out. You can use the link in the description box below. Again, that is an affiliate link. I do make a small commission, but that's at no extra charge to you. So with all of that out of the way, let's just go ahead and jump into the computer. Let me see. It's been a while since I've used my my Stream Deck and everything, so I'm looking at all the buttons. But for those of you who are not familiar, let me show you what we're going to create. This is the image that I was displaying on the splash page here, and you can see it's really just this photo of a leaf. And still life and flat lays, things like that, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. The goal is to really just have fun and enjoy what it is that you have going on, and that's essentially what I'm doing here. But I added in this texture in the background, and I did get this from a pack from Joel Grimes, but I'm also going to show you some other textures that I got from ON1. So again, as much as I plug ON1, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that watches my content that I am a huge fan and supporter of ON1 Photo Raw. I really do enjoy the software, and hence, what I'm going through today to kind of showcase what you can do just with ON1 Photo Raw, as well as some of the textures that are in ON1, and then importing your own textures. But this is what we're going to try and recreate. This is a TIFF file, and it's the completed version. But if we come back over here, it essentially begins, oh, there we go. It essentially begins like this. And you can see that this is not the most gorgeous image. And that is the beauty of being able to work inside of ON1 Photo Raw and really start to build up your backgrounds and things of that sort. Now, I did take some images with my iPhone. If we get around to it, then I will definitely go through those. But the last image I want to show you before we dive into the technique is this image right here. So this is inside of my office space. It's literally right behind me. And this is the setup that I was using. This is just a piece of gray poster board that I purchased from Michael's, the arts and crafts store. And I went outside, I picked up some leaves, I dropped it on top of this this backdrop here. And this is using natural light. That's what the iPhone photos were using. But I did actually have a speed light over here, and it's not pictured because I went and did some other still life shoots with that speed light. But you don't need a whole lot of space is the goal here, or what I'm trying to get after. And that's what I really enjoy about using or doing still life photography. I don't do it as often. Probably gonna do a little bit more now that it's wintertime and it's a little bit cooler outside. So let's go ahead and get into the technique, because that is what you came here for. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the original file. All right. And this is a raw photo that I took with my Sony a7R4. You can see that up here in the right corner. Now we're going to get some more real estate because I don't need that left pane because we're going to build this up all by ourselves. So the first step to developing this particular look is really isolating the subject from the background. Now, I recommend doing this prior to doing this prior to creating your backdrops and putting those in. All right. I really do recommend that. So what we're going to do is come over to local, because this is where I like to build my masks, and I think that it works well. And I'm just going to hit add adjustment, and I'm going to leave it on negative exposure for now. And then we'll come up to the top here, and we're going to grab the quick mask AI brush. All right. And because I photographed this on something that was gray, you could do this on really any of the neutral colors. So white, black, and gray. The goal here, and I'll show it to you once this gets done reading the image. But the goal here is to have something that is solid in the background, that is different in tonal value than the subject, because it makes it really easy to just do something like this and select the item. All right. So it does start with the background choice. And so, you know, when you're getting ready to do your still life or your flat lay, go and grab the item that you want to put onto the flat lay and just put the two together and see if there's some contrast and separation. Because if I photograph black on black or white on white, that probably would be really hard for me to separate from this backdrop. However, gray usually works really, really well. I would say gray works the best for pretty much everything, but it will impact your end result. And we may talk about that here. I don't know how technical I'm going to get with the blend modes. But once I have that set, I'm going to leave that to paint in because I want to select the leaf. And I'm just going to hit the check mark. So it's going to apply that negative exposure to the leaf, which isn't really what I want. But that's okay because we're really just trying to make a selection right now. And that is what I want, which is the selection. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and reset the exposure slider, and that gets us back to our normal space here, or where we were. And what we'll do is open up the midtones, and you can see that that leaf starts to come to life. It's really important, at least I think, it's really important that you photograph this in RAW. That's going to give you the most flexibility to really start to direct how your image is going to look. And I did shoot this with the light over here to the left side of the frame, and you can tell because the shadows are casted in this direction. All right, so paying attention to the light is really going to make a difference, especially when you start building up your overall lighting in the scene here. All right, so I'm not going to do too much with this right now because I will come back to this, but I will increase the structure just to give that a little bit more definition and maybe open up some of the shadows. I don't want to open up a whole lot because I actually like the shadows on here, which is why I'm just opening up the middle grays, and then maybe just increase the highlights to really start to build that separation between the highlights and the shadows. And I'll leave that like so. So we'll just label this leaf cut out. And now this is where the fun begins. All right. Notice I didn't expose my backdrop, and I did that intentionally. The reason I don't want to expose my backdrop is because the cutout of the leaf, and let me actually show you that and it's probably easier to show you with the red overlay. So we'll turn that on. Okay. So ON1 did a really, really good job at cutting out this leaf. And if you look in the background here, notice that the shadow isn't actually selected. That's important to pay attention to because the blend modes are going to bring back that shadow. All right. So Now what we're going to do is come over to effects, and I'm going to just start off with a texture. All right. And this is going all over the image. I don't necessarily want that. So let me come back over here, grab my leaf, and you got to make sure that you activate the mask, and then we'll go ahead and copy said mask. All right. Once we have that mask copied, then we'll come over to effects, and we will click on the texture mask, right click, and we're going to hit paste. Now, obviously that's putting the texture on the leaf itself. So I'm just going to right click and hit invert mask. And that is now putting the texture all over in the background. And you can see I still have my shadow here. Let me talk you through this. Just pull this up so we get a little bit more real estate over here. So let me talk you through kind of what's going on here. The cool thing about ON1, you don't have to know much about blending modes. All right. We are going to talk about them just a very little bit, and just enough for you to get started with experimenting, because if you've watched anything on my channel, I tell you to just experiment, try something. If it doesn't work, delete it, start over again. It doesn't really matter. The goal here is really just to have fun, stay inspired, and keep creating. All right. There's a reason why I say that. But we have some blend modes underneath the texture. Now this could be collapsed. So we'll just go ahead and collapse everything so you can see potentially what yours may look like. If you last used this or never used this, and maybe for some reason everything is collapsed, you can click on texture and you'll open it up. All right. That's normal usage of ON1. But I do know that some people have asked me, I don't see what you see, Chris. Why is that? So that could be one of the reasons why. So I'm going to go ahead and click on mode, and I get a few different options here. Now, these are like blend modes. All right. I have normal, which is just essentially putting it right over the background there. And it's like normal blending. If you were to come up here and you use this blend mode, that's what that is. All right. Then you have subtle, which is letting a little bit of that background kind of shine through, and then putting the texture over the top. All right. Then we have lighter, and obviously lighter is another blend mode. Again, I'm not going to go through what each of these are doing because you can kind of see it. But notice with lighter on this particular image, I'm going to go ahead and select it so I can hover over here. Let me see, get my zoom tool. On this particular image, look at how it is removing. There we go. Look at how it's removing that shadow. So this, it doesn't look very good. It doesn't look natural. It doesn't look like it belongs, right? Shadows are extremely, extremely important to flat lays, still life, any form of photography. You need shadows. All right. Don't get rid of shadows completely. Like, you can open the shadows, but don't get rid of them completely, because it helps build dimension in the photo. And that's why this doesn't look so good. Whereas if I go back to subtle, that actually looks like it's sitting right on top of this texture. Okay. And that's what we want to do. Give me 1 second. Okay. Had to clear my throat. So, lighter, not the best solution here. And then we have darker, and you can see darker. It makes everything dark, obviously, but look at the shadows. And that's the goal here. Just look at the shadows and see what's happening with those when you are using these overlays. All right. And then of course we have replace, and that's essentially getting rid of everything and just putting this as the background. This could be helpful if you're finding that either the darker or the lighter solutions don't work for you. So if I was to hit replace, and then let's say I really do like this texture, this background, but my backdrop that I originally shot it on, the gray, it's not producing the shadows for me. Well, what I can do is, with the texture option selected, or texture tool selected, I can come up to blending, and then I get more blend mode options. And this is the power of ON1 Photo Raw, right? So if you want to think about it in, I guess, levels of progression, down here would be level 1, right? Just go to mode and select one of the 5 that are available to you. Really the 4, right? Because the 5th one, you're going to have to use level 2. So you got 4 options available to you: darker, lighter, subtle, and normal. And then if none of those work, then you go to replace. And then that means you're about to activate level 2 of using the blend modes. All right. And then that's going to bring you up to blending, make sure that you have texture selected. Okay. This light gray background shows that I have texture selected. Then what I'm going to do is come up here to blending, and I'm going to hit normal, or I'm sorry, hit the drop down under blend. And now I get all of the blend modes available to me in ON1. And this is level 2. I would say that this is the highest level of blending with textures, at least for now, for the purposes of building these flat lays, right? So there's level 1 and there's level 2. We're on level 2 now. What this allows us to do is get access to multiply, which is a different blend mode than darker. And then it also gives us access to color burn, linear burn. Like, you can just go through these, right? You don't have to know what each of these is doing to the image, other than just hitting the down arrow and cycling through until you get something that you like. Like, I like color dodge on this particular look overall. All right. And you can just go through here. And then of course you get overlay. I really like overlay for this one as well, which I think overlay and soft light are subtle option in level 1. So, I think you'll see different outcomes based off of the backdrop that you choose to use. And that's why I'm showing you this, because I don't know what type of backdrop you're going to use. I don't know how you're going to apply the blend modes and things of that sort. So I'm showing it to you this way, so that way you can make a decision on which form you want to go with to blend your texture. All right. And I promise this is like the most technical we're going to get today with the ON1 blending and building these backdrops, because this is literally as hard as it gets, right? And I actually kind of like this one. This is pin light. I like pin light, but I don't like that it's not showing the shadows. So I would have to paint those back in. And again, that gets a little bit more difficult than what I want to cover in today's lesson. So we're not going to do that. But you get the point. Now, I wouldn't come below the break really with difference all the way down to luminosity. Actually, I take that back. I would use luminosity only if you like the texture. Like in this particular image, I like the texture, but I don't like the color. All right. That's going to allow the tonal values shine through and really allow that texture to be placed over the image, and then you can blend that with your other texture. So let's go ahead and get working on some, like really building this up. Okay, so for this one, I think subtle works quite well. All right, it matches the light, and that's the other thing. I guess we can start talking about that right now. When you select a texture and a background, you want to make sure that you're matching the light on your main subject to the background to make it look realistic. So let me show you an example of what may not look good. All right, give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the exposure, and I'm going to make it pretty bright, just so that way. Now, you would probably never do this, right? But the goal here is you don't want to make, or at least I wouldn't recommend, I won't say you don't, I would not recommend making your exposure really bright and then making the backdrop really dark. It could work if that's what you're going for, and maybe that's your thing. That's cool. Who am I to tell you what to do with your art? However, I would recommend keeping the light about even with what's happening in the backdrop here. So you're probably wondering, like, Chris, well, how do I do that? Well, the easiest way that I've found to kind of observe the light in an image and how things are, separating is by coming to the add filter and then adding a black and white filter. Now, you could make a black and white flat lay, but I like just turning on the black and white filter, leaving that on, and then coming over to my local adjustment. And you can see that it's kind of blending in with the background right now. It's not really popping, like, as far as the tonal values. And it does kind of match the light. There's more highlights here than there are on the background. So I'd probably pull the highlights down a bit and maybe even lower the overall exposure. And the goal is just to match the leaf to the background in the black and white space. All right. That's the goal. You will have to play around with the sliders. And today we're not going to go deep into that because that's a whole different lesson as far as balancing exposure and tones. But the goal of what you could do is just essentially pull this down until it starts to match with the background there. And then, of course, you want to check to make sure that it's actually doing what you want it to do in the color space. So you go ahead and turn off the black and white, and you can see that that matches the tonality of the backdrop a little bit better overall. I personally don't really care for that particular look because I want something that's a little bit more punchy in the leaf. I want it to kind of stand out. So I'm going to go ahead and contrast it a little bit more and increase the highlights because I think that that definitely helps. Maybe even push the whites a bit, pull down on the blacks, and then let's go back over here and take a look. Yeah, so I like what that's doing to the overall image for me personally, or for the leaf overall. So I always leave, or you could leave the black and white adjustment just sitting there and see what that does, but that's up to you. All right. Now, back to the texture, all right? I am going to go with a darken, and I actually kind of like this tree effect, all right? But I'm not quite sure I like the color of it. So what I'm going to do is add in another texture. And this time, I'm going to find something that has the color that I like, all right? So I'm just going to come over here to my drop down, and I'm going to use an ON1 specific texture. I did get this from the premium packs in ON1, but it's okay. You can use whatever you want. You can even go and photograph your own textures and then upload them or import them. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of cycle through these and find a color scheme that I really like. And, this is all subjective. Like, whatever you choose that you're like, I really, really like that, then, you can go for it. Don't know if I like that as much. And I don't want to belabor this too much, so I'm just going to select something. Yeah, I think I like this. It's got that orange undertone, very similar to what I'm experiencing with the leaf overall. And because I still have that mask selected, I'm just going to go ahead and right click and hit paste, or I have that mask on my clipboard, I should say. And then of course I need to invert it because I only want to apply that to the background. And now you see we get another separation of what's happening between the background and the leaf. But I have these two textures happening, one bringing in more color than the other, which I think is actually pretty cool. And I could play around with my blend modes here, right? And this is where that experimentation comes in. But I like what normal is doing for this particular look. All right. And then I'll probably just pull down on the opacity to kind of blend those two together. You could go 100% and that looks pretty good too, right? It's all up to you. You are the artist when you are creating here inside of ON1, and I'm just showing you how to use the tools so you can go and build whatever you want to. But I like to kind of build my textures up. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull this back and kind of blend these things in. So I like what I got going on there. And it is wise to rename these. So I'll call this base, and this is a tree texture. So that way I know which one I'm working on. And then this one is the ON1 Autumn Collection. You can label them whatever you want. That's just how I feel like labeling these right now. Then I'm going to go ahead and probably add another filter to this. So I'll hit add and add in another texture. And you know, you really just start to build these things on top of your image. This is literally the process that I go through when I make these. And you know, you could play around with all kinds of different things. Maybe there's something in the paper section that I may want to add. And you know, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just whatever works the best for your image. All right. And I like how these lighter textures are really brightening up the image. So I'll go with this oatmeal paper 1 probably. The texture itself, I'm not sure what that's doing. If that texture is even helping with the overall image. But I do like the brightness that it brings. And if I turn it off and turn it back on, you can kind of see it doing something. It's not very strong. And if I turn it to normal, it looks bad. Subtle looks the best right now. Lighter does not look good. But that is actually what the texture looks like. And then we have darker. So let's see here. We will go with subtle. I'm going to push this all the way up because I think it would be cool to kind of get that that texture to come through. So maybe we will go with replace. And this is, again, why we go through, why we learned about level 1 and level 2. All right. So I like replace because I want this over here on the right side. I think that would be cool to have in the image. So let's see if there's a blend mode that will allow us to get that into the image. So I'm just going to cycle through these blend modes and look at that. Color burn gets it in there pretty decent. And remember, I haven't masked this to just the background yet. So we will play around with that here shortly. Overlaid, not so much. And I'm not looking at the leaf itself. I'm just looking at this right side because I do like this texture of the paper on the right hand side here. So I'm just trying to find a way to bring that out. And as I told you, luminosity sometimes works, but I think color burn works the best. And let me see if I come to tone and color, can I brighten it up? Or maybe darken it down. Okay, maybe not so much, but that's okay. Because now I'm just going to go ahead and mask that particular portion in. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the mask, hit the letter M to get my masking bug. And then I am going to go linear, I think it's left. We'll click there. And yeah, so it applies my mask over here on the right hand side. For those of you who are like, Chris, how do you know linear left will apply it to the right? Like, why is it the opposite? The best thing that I can tell you is whatever you select up here in your options, the mask will do the opposite. Have no idea what the logic is behind that. But if you're ever confused and you're like, Chris, how do you know which one is going to do what? Well, you have to think, where do I want the effect to go? I want it on the right side, so I need to choose the opposite option. So if I wanted something to go on the bottom, I would select linear top. And if I wanted something to go on the top, select linear bottom. And that's the way that it works. The same is also true when you come over to these shapes. So if I want something to go into the center, then I want to click edges because you can see what it's doing. And if I want something to go on the edges, then I need to click center. The only one that actually works the way you expect it to would be the reflected gradient. So that's a quick side note on using the preset for the masking bug, but I digress from that. So let's go ahead and turn off the overlay, and we are going to fade this in just the way that we want. All right, so now I have this texture over here on the right side of the image, and I actually like that. I think that that looks pretty cool. So turn this off, turn it back on, and you can see how you can just start to really build things up. Now, one of the things that you may want to do is start to control like the light around your subject. And one of the best ways that I found to do that is to come over to the local, and we're going to add another adjustment, and we will paste in our mask, and then we'll invert it. And then that's darkening down the entire background. Now, I'm not going to leave it completely dark, right? But I am going to darken it just a bit. Then what I'm going to do is make sure that I have my mask selected, and then I'm going to grab my brush tool. So hit the letter B if you don't have the brush tool selected. And this is where, you know, getting a little bit more creative with the masking and you know, working inside of ON1 kind of comes in. So actually, first what I'll do is I will select the masking bug. And again, I want to put something, I want to make the center of this brighter. So I want to apply the darkening effect to the edges. So I'm going to click on center and then click right here. And you can see that, again, as confusing as that may be, it applies this light effect right in the center. Now, I'm not adding light. I'm just recovering the light that this negative exposure is causing. And you could shape this however you want. I just like to make a little bit of a narrow light path right down behind the leaf. I feel like that adds in a little bit more drama. And then maybe just pull out the feather so that way the shadows, and on this particular project, I would probably pull that over to the right a little bit. And that's really just so I can get these shadows in the image, because the shadows are really, really important. At least I think the shadows are important. So I want to make sure that those stay inside my overall image. And then you can do one of two things. You can come to opacity and you can pull back on the opacity, and that's going to, you know, obviously lighten up that overall effect. However, what I like to do is leave the opacity all the way up. And this is where that fun artistic side of me kind of comes out from time to time. All right. I also downloaded some brushes from ON1. If you are a Plus member, all right. Now, if you're a Plus member, you can go and download brushes from ON1. They have some brush packs in there. Or what you can do is go and find Photoshop brushes. They have to be Photoshop brushes. You can download those from the internet, purchase them from wherever you get them. I don't know exactly where I got the brushes I'm about to use from, but you can download them and then you can import them into ON1 and use them as a creative brush. Now, what I'm going to do is come down here because I have some ON1 frost brushes. Now, I get it. They're in my mind, or in the essence of the image. This isn't like a winter image, but I like the texture of these brushes. All right, so these ones came from ON1. I'm just going to go ahead and select this ON1 frost brush here and bring it over my image. Now, with a feather all the way down to 0, and you can do this one of two ways. You can lower your opacity, or you can come back into the brush settings and you can lower your flow. Either one, it doesn't matter. Whichever one works the best for you or is the most user-friendly for you, you could do that. I like to work with the flow. And then what I do is I come around to these edges where it's a little bit darker, and I want to make sure that I'm on erase because I want to erase the effect from there. And I just click, and what you're going to see is the light starts to come back in just those little areas. All right. And I like to do this around my image. And this gives a dappled light effect that you can't quite tell what's happening. You just know something is happening. All right. And then of course you want to rotate this. So I'll change the angle and maybe even change the size of the brush to vary up, make the light a little bit more varied. And if I hit the letter O, and I mean, you could kind of see what's happening around the edges here, but it's easier if I show you in the grayscale. So this is what I'm doing to the image, and it doesn't look great in the mask view, but when you turn off the mask, it really does make a difference to the overall image. And you just build up these effects, and you could do this in a few different ways, right? So maybe that will be like initial light, and then you can add another. This time I'll do a positive exposure, and this time I'm actually adding in light. So I want to paint, leaving this on paint up here, and then I can just click all over on the canvas, because maybe this area of the canvas that I added in the texture, it's just not coming in or coming through the way that I would expect it to. So I want to brighten that up. And then, you know, you always want to check to see if your work is doing what you would expect it to. So I'll turn it off, turn it back on, and you can see how that's just brightening up this area just a little bit. And, you know, you could spend a very long time clicking and building this type of stuff up. However you choose to do it, it's the art. It's the fun of creating inside of ON1. And this is what that mask looks like, right? You can see I spent a lot of time in that one area, really just trying to bring back a little bit of exposure in that area. And I'm not rotating my brush right now, but that is the idea. And then if I turn this off and turn it back on, you can see how it just starts to make that paper in the background look a little bit more weathered. You could do all kinds of stuff, right? Now, I know that I'm throwing a lot out in this particular tutorial, but this is really the beginning of what you could do, right? I could say, okay, I'm done with this now, and I can export this and be done, right? Because I've gotten pretty good. I've gotten it pretty good. I just want to bring my flow and reset my angle to 0, and then reset my brush as well. I don't know why this won't let me. There we go. And then I'll bring my brush back to the regular one. All right. So what can we do with this now? All right, we've already added in, and actually it always works, or it always does some good to hold down the backslash key to see where you started. This is what we started with, and this is where we've gotten. And I haven't really done anything to the leaf. So, excuse me. So what we can do with the leaf is add in some dynamic contrast. That is probably one of the coolest things. And I actually like what it does to the overall image. So what we may do, and again, this is just the way that I think through things, right? I'm going to apply the dynamic contrast only to the leaf right now. And then what I'm going to do is making sure that I have this mask activated. I'm going to come up here to the masking, and I'm going to pull down on the density slider. Now, this is something I don't talk about a whole lot inside of ON1 and masking, but essentially what it does is it starts to punch a hole. Watch this black area here. As I pull this density slider down, you're going to see that turn gray. What that means is it's allowing the effect to go through just a little bit onto the areas where you normally would never have it. When it's completely black, that means the effect is just absolutely not there. But as you pull the density down, you'll see that it starts to bring that effect in. So let me show you what that looks like in real time over here on the image. So we'll come back over to density, and I'm just going to pull this down, and eventually you're going to start to see that build up in the background. Now, it's probably really hard to see because I'm having a hard time seeing it. I do see it, but it's like very, very subtle because it's just a little bit, right? And I like this in this particular image. So let me go ahead and turn off the effect and then turn it back on. And you can just see how it brings in that overall contrast, right? Just a little bit. And I really, really appreciate having that slider here inside of ON1. So let's just go ahead and pull down the opacity on this a bit, because I don't want it to be like overly powerful in the image. And then we turn it back off, turn it back on, and I like where this is right now as far as like the leaf and the background and things of that sort. So that's one thing that you can do, especially with something like a leaf where it really lends itself well to using the dynamic contrast. Now, what else can we do? You know, I always ask myself, okay, what else can I do? Well, one, I'm going to make a snapshot because I don't want to mess this up, and I actually like this look. So we're just going to call this look 1. All right. Snapshots are your friend. Make snapshots. So the next thing, now that I would call this like the base look, right? I can hit add filter, and, you know, let's play around with the antique filter. I don't use this filter all that much, but I do like, you know, I think that for a image like this, it works pretty decently well on. So let's see here. I like to just go through the presets and see if that doesn't look too bad. It matches with the overall color tone. This doesn't look too bad. And, you know, this is just experimenting. And I'm looking kind of twofold, right? I'm looking, do I like this over the entire image? And then that's the first look that I'm observing. And then the second one is, do I like this over just the subject, or do I like this over just the background? Because I have that mask, I can punch a hole and put this look on any part of the image that I so choose. So, you know, that is what I do when I'm looking through these presets. And then I'm also looking over here on the right side of, is this helping make that texture on the right side shine through? Because I went through all the effort of making that show up on the backdrop here. So I should probably see if this is complementing that or not. All right. And you can see how that works overall with the image. So I feel like that just takes away all the color that was in there. Let's go with Istanbul. Nah, I want something that's gonna, maybe we will go with Kiev. Let's go with Kiev. And then we can fade this a little bit. And then of course I want to punch the hole because I don't want this over my leaf. We went through all that effort to get the leaf looking pretty good. So I'm going to punch a hole, and then I'm going to invert my mask, and that doesn't look very good, right? Well, remember, we have options, all right? We have two options, really. We have the ability to come over here to our opacity and just kind of pull that down. And that makes the paper look a little, you know, old time-ish, if you will. And you could fade this a whole lot. You want to be careful with the fade slider because it does get a little aggressive. We can maybe darken this and pull down on the fade, but I'm not a huge fan of that. So the other option that we have before you start working with the fade slider is you can come over here, making sure that you have the antique layer or effect selected. We can click on blending. This is just another way of getting to blending. So you can click the 3-line menu and then come down to the bottom, click blending. You can see that it jumped over to the blending option up here. And if you have the floating property bar, you'll know how that's working as well. I just have everything nested over here in the right column for my own simplicity's sake and making sure I know where everything is on my screen. But I can click on the blend option, and then I can just come down here and kind of just work through all of these blend modes until I see something where it's like, man, that looks really good. And you got to kind of be careful because we did develop a color palette, and I'm selecting something that may not be the best for the color palette. Like if I go with linear dodge, you can see how that's causing like this purplish look in the backdrop, and that doesn't look too good. So I don't know if I would go with that. But we're just going to cycle through here because this is what I do. I just have fun. And that does us no good for luminosity. So maybe if I had to go with this particular antique filter, I would probably go with screen as my blend option. And the reason for that is it complements the photo pretty well. So if we go with screen, and why did it not select screen? There we go. If we go with that and then just pull down on the opacity, you can kind of blend this in. And again, you want to turn things off and turn them back on. And if I find like, you know, this is really only working pretty good over here on the right hand side, even though I think it is fitting quite well over here on the left side. It's adding in like a lighter color, so it goes from this darker look. And again, this is why we made that snapshot, because I want to be able to come back to my previous edit. Maybe I want to make a lighter edit, and this is the way that I get that, so that could work. But if I say, you know what, I really only like it over here on the right side because this texture, right? Then what I could do is grab my masking bug, and remember, I want to put it on to the right side. So when I come up here to the preset, I want linear left because I want the opposite of where I want it to go when I select the tool. So I'll click that, and then I'll just click right here. And you can see that it only applied, if I hit the letter O, it only applied it over there. But what's also cool is because I had the AI mask select from the leaf, I also get the ability to keep the cutout of my leaf and only apply this to the backdrop. That is what I really enjoy. It's a form of compound masking. It's a very, very powerful technique, and I think that it should absolutely be used inside of creating things like this. So we'll just go ahead and rotate that around, pull this out, and I'm just going to fade this in where I think it should probably start and stop. And you could fade this as far as you want, right? So maybe I could do something like that. And that is a unique look all on its own, because it's just lightening up this right side and kind of fading in from the left here, but it's not impacting my leaf. I really do like that particular look as well. So what else can we do? And this should be the paper texture. Well, let's say I want this paper texture over here on the left-hand side as well, because I have it on the right side. Maybe it makes sense to match it on the left side. So let's go ahead and click on it. We are ornamental paper 1. Okay. So we'll hit add, go to textures, and then go up here to paper, ornamental paper 1. Okay. So essentially what I did was I just duplicated it, right? Well, what I want to do is rotate this. And the texture layer actually has the transform tools. So we can hit transform, and we can click on this flip horizontally. So if I click that, you can see it moved over here. It's not as vivid because as this one, because we need to use that blend mode. So we're going to come over here to replace, and I think we had it all the way up. One thing that I would love to see ON1 add to the software is the ability to copy a effect, like just allow us to copy the effect so I can, or duplicate the effect or whatever. But it is what it is, because there's other ways of getting it, right? So replace at 100%. And then if I remember correctly, I think this blend mode was on color burn. Yeah, that's where it was. So we'll come back over to this texture, and it's already up to 100%. And then we'll come over to blending and click on color burn. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so now I have this paper, a look or effect over here on the left hand side, but it has muddied up the overall option or the overall image. So what I'm going to do is click on it one more time, click on the mask, right click, paste, and then of course we're going to have to invert it because it's not where it should be. And then we're going to hit the letter M, grab the masking bug. This time I want linear right because I want to apply this effect to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and click right there. And we will fade this in just like that. Now, you're probably wondering, well, Chris, why are there two different colors? Why do you have a color on the left and a color on the right? Why does that look so weird? Well, remember, we have our antique look that's activated. So if I turn that off, you can see it matches the color across. So you do have to pay attention to what you're doing inside of ON1 when you start building these effects. But I don't really mind the cross look here. I think that looks pretty cool overall. So I'll go ahead and save this as a snapshot as well. We'll just call this look 2. And, you know, I could go on and on about different things that we can do to really start to develop this overall look, right? Because we started with this, not very interesting. And then we got to something like this, which is a little bit more interesting, or at least I think it is. And this is kind of fine art-esque, if you will. You could definitely sell this as fine art, or at least I think you could. But the follow-on thing is sometimes you may need to, sometimes cropping it actually works. So we can hit the letter C, and depending on what you want to do with this, usually images like this, a square works pretty well. So I'll just do it like that with a square. The only thing that I would caution you with cropping your images is paying attention to what's happening with their textures. Because if there's something like on this particular image, I appreciated the ornamental paper, and now I just cut that off, right? So you gotta kind of pay attention to those sorts of things when you are making your editing decision, because you may lose something that you really actually enjoyed having in your image. But you'll know that it happened because you're able to look at it. And then of course you can always just get it back, right? So I can just reset this and I'm back to where I was before. So it's not that big of a deal. That's the beauty of working inside of software like ON1, because you can just kind of backtrack if you do something and you're like, man, that did not come out the way that I expected it to. You can just revert back to something else, and it's non-destructive, right? That's the point that I'm trying to make here. So yeah, I really do think that is the gist of creating these types of images. And you could do a whole lot more. I really could do a whole lot more. I just don't want to make this stream any longer than an hour. So that's why I'm kind of coming to an end here of what I think you could do with this type of image. But let's see, because I like to have fun, right? If you know anything about me, I like to have fun. So let's add a glow filter. And with glow, you can do a number of things, right? So that doesn't look too bad. Maybe I'll pull down on the opacity of that particular filter and turn it off and on. That doesn't look bad, right? I think that brings the whole look together. So that is a glow look. What else could we do? Maybe let's see what bleach bypass does, because bleach bypass, maybe if we brighten it a little bit and push the detail, you got to be careful with that. That doesn't look too good, at least in my opinion. Definitely not on this image. Maybe pull down the opacity, but again, we're just having fun. And maybe saturate it or desaturate. Desaturating it doesn't look too bad. And what about if I pull the contrast down? No, I can pull the contrast up. Bleach bypass also has this tint option. So if I pull up on the amount, now that looks like really old schoolish. Let's see here. And I'm just experimenting, right? Throw in a blue tint. And then of course you could always do something like this, right? You can grab the color picker and let's click on the leaf right here. So it's giving me this color, and now that matches the color of the leaf. And I could probably do something complementary to that. So green doesn't look so good. Maybe blue. Nope. So as far as the bleach bypass, I would say that probably doesn't look so good. But if I turn it off, turn it back on, you can kind of see if you like something like that. But I don't like that. So what else could we do? We might even be able to, let's see if we could do something with a blur. All right. Blurs are a ton of fun. All right. Let's see what a motion blur will do. It doesn't make sense to have a motion blur on this, but this is the point of having fun. So we blur it, and then let's paste our mask and let's invert it. Okay. See, I would never have thought to do this, but you might be able to get away with this. I don't know. It looks interesting, at least. Maybe don't pull the distance so far and smooth it out. I'm not sure. You let me know. Again, this is all just me playing around, having fun. That doesn't look too bad. Like, I don't know. It doesn't look too bad. It's not something that I would initially do, but this is the point of like just experimenting and throwing ideas out inside of ON1 just to see what you can do. And I don't know. You let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section. But we did hit an hour, and like I said, I could sit here and just play around with all of these filters. I could modify colors with color enhancers. I could throw a curve module in there and really just start to go to town with painting light all over the image. I could do all kinds of stuff, and you can even throw in LUTs, right? And then if there's something, you know what, let's throw in a match color effect, because ON1 just released this particular tool, and let's see if any of these, obviously blue sky probably wouldn't work too good. But here's some of the presets from ON1, and you know, one of these, I feel like Medusa works the best. If I turn this off, turn it back on, and you know, you gotta play with these things, right? Let's see. Pull down luminosity and contrast it. Yeah, I don't know. But you get the idea, right? You could just play around with this. And if I turn this off, turn it back on, it doesn't look too bad. It's not a look that I would probably go for. I still like what we're getting right here with the effects that we have on here. But the sky is the limit. I'm just throwing all kinds of stuff on here. Yeah. So I'm gonna call it there, because like I said, I could go on and on inside of ON1 Photo Raw, recreating all kinds of effects and looks and things of the sort. So I want to say thank you to everyone who hung out on the live stream today. And if you're watching this as a replay, then by all means, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. If you are interested in more flat lay tutorials similar to this, or just exploring ON1, doing, you know, I would say more creative things than just the generic edits, let me know in the comment section, because I do just kind of sit around with ON1 and I click around in there and make stuff up. Some of it sees the light of day, some of it doesn't. And this is just one of those things where I was picking up my cameras so I can keep using and creating, because I too struggle sometimes being inspired to create, which is why I actually started this channel, to give me an outlet to continue creating and doing things. So hopefully that resonates with some of you. Again, I do appreciate everyone who hung out. If you want to pick up ON1 Photo Raw, consider using the coupon code FreeWillPhotos20. Let me see if I can get that popped up on here. There it is. So consider using the coupon code FreeWillPhotos20, if I can speak. It will save you some money at checkout. Again, they are having a sale over at ON1. If you want to help support this channel, consider using the link in the description box below. That is my affiliate link. Again, I make a small commission, but it's at no extra charge to you. Every time that you use that link, I greatly appreciate it. So I look forward to your questions and your comments to come. And until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.